Good evening and welcome to this Wednesday webinar all about cooking methods that can help support weight loss. I'm Laura Goldman. I am the dietitian with Premier Weight Loss, and tonight's topic covers cooking and how you can hopefully better enhance the foods that you prepare at home. Or also maybe this can advise you indirectly on some of the better foods to choose when you're dining out. So remember, I've added on a little bit this week to the common phrase I use every week. It is the quality of your calories that matters. And keep in mind during this discussion that the method may very well impact that quality. So not only is it about picking the right types of foods, but then also preparing them in the healthiest possible ways. And there's more than one way to do this. So it's not like if you've been steaming or boiling your entire life that you are completely undone. So don't worry, there are various ways to approach this. So what we'll cover in general is why cooking methods can matter and why it especially matters when on a GLP-1 medication. Some fast facts on what is going on with frying. We will also touch on more than just calories. Calories play a very important part of all this, but it's also about getting the proper nutrition while you're on these medications and off of them as well. I give a quick breakdown of cooking methods with a summary sheet that can give you some ideas and the best use of each type of cooking method. A couple challenges of the week to try out, and as always, I leave time for questions at the end. So why do cooking methods matter? First and foremost, if you're on a GLP-1 medication, there are side effects that can be associated with it. And for some people, they're stronger than others. And you may have a reduced appetite that doesn't correlate to any type of uncomfortable feeling. But there are a few people who report symptoms such as nausea, reflux, etc., which is very unpleasant. And that can be triggered or even further become a bigger issue when you are eating fatty and greasy foods because they like to linger in the stomach a bit longer. And with that delayed gastric emptying, then you could have this problem. So if we can avoid those symptoms, why not give that a try? Also, for everyone, you can use cooking methods as another tool for your health. As it was implied, you are likely to have fewer added calories if we're trying to find ways to cook outside of frying. We'll have that better GI tolerance for just about everyone. And also, you can maximize your nutrition in various ways, depending on sort of what your goals might be. So first and foremost, also when we're talking about cooking methods, I think frying tends to be the big question for a lot of people as to why it's such a big deal. And really what's going on is that frying, deep frying or pan frying is a major calorie adder because we have that food and breading that can absorb a decent portion of that oil. I'm sure you've seen that if you are sautéing or pan frying something, especially if the food has a breading, maybe the pan starts out full of oil, but by the end, that oil is kind of gone. And where it goes is not evaporation, but actually is getting incorporated into the food. It helps add flavor for sure, but that is a significant amount of calories that can be added. Also, deep frying over and over again, if you're using the same oil, can lead to some potential production of trans fats and also some unhealthy compounds. So there are other aspects to it as well. But that could be a different presentation topic. And then if we're comparing, so we still want something maybe similar to that fried experience, so air frying, which has become very popular lately, or if we're just looking at baking, when we want to compare the frying the standard frying to these, you can see here that deep frying will increase the fat content of the food that you're eating by 45 to 75%. But if you bake or air fry with a little bit of oil, that fat content only increases maybe 0% if you aren't using any oils to 10%. And so based on that information and study and other studies, it shows that air frying can actually reduce the calorie content by 45 calories for every 3.5 ounces or 100 grams of food. And 45 calories may sound small, but that can really add up. Also, I think it's important that like I said, we're not talking just about calories, we're talking about overall nutrition. And so various cooking methods can have a large impact on how much of a certain vitamin or mineral or other nutrient survives or is available to you in your body after cooking. But, and I like to make this very clear, the best cooking method truly can depend on the nutrient we're looking at. So vitamin C, we can see here that steaming is an ideal situation, especially if we are going to be cooking vegetables that contain vitamin C. You can see here with the steaming, you're losing maybe 8.6 to 14.3% of the vitamin C content before it was cooked, which isn't a huge loss, especially when you're comparing that to if you were boiling those foods. A lot of times people have grown up on boiled vegetables, and if you're removing the vegetables from the water and not using that water for a broth or other soup, you are losing those vitamins, especially vitamin C and other water-soluble vitamins. So when they studied the amount of vitamin C lost when compared between steaming and boiling, you can see that 40 to 55% of vitamin C was lost when being boiled. I wanted to include roasting here because roasting vegetables is one of my favorite ways to prepare vegetables. I feel like it's a really great way to impart some flavor, a little bit of caramelization. And while it's not ideal for vitamin C because it can sort of break that down with that high heat and extended time in cooking, it's still better than boiling. And we're only focusing here on vitamin C. There are a variety of other nutrients and vitamins that aren't as impacted quite as strongly. So again, the best method can really depend on the nutrient. If you're looking to get a lot of vitamin C, steaming is a good option. But if you've got that covered more or less, and you just want to enjoy the flavor, still get some good fiber and other nutrition and phenolic compounds and antioxidants, if you prefer the taste of roasting, that would be ideal. Boiling, you'll see later, I suggest saving that for soups and things like that. And even though I touched on it, the nutrient impact really is vegetable and I suppose fruit if we're looking at that, and nutrient specific. So I wanted to give another example, and here the study referenced focused on sweet potatoes actually, and different types of sweet potatoes, but in general, a sweet potato. And so steaming here helped retain the most polyphenols. So polyphenols are an antioxidant, and the polyphenols here, we're looking at heart and brain health, essentially. Roasting helped retain the most anthocyanins, so is a very specific type of polyphenol that's associated with heart health. And then, boiling, you might want to discount it until you see here that when boiling sweet potatoes, boiling actually helped to preserve the carotenoids. Carotenoids are the orange color, you can say, and eye health is what that's associated with. So boiling is not out of the equation, but it does depend on, again, the nutrient and the vegetable that we're looking at. Here, I wanted to give you an example or leave you a summary of some very common cooking methods. So you can see on the left-hand side here, grilling, roasting or baking, sautéing, steaming, air frying, and boiling. I give a definition of what that means in case you're not familiar with the terms or how they qualify. And also I list out here what these cooking methods are best for. So where you're going to get some of the better nutrient impact, but also flavor impact, because that does count. You should be able to enjoy your food. Here, I just want to make sure I mention here under roasting and baking. Baking is more about casseroles or foods that are pourable, I guess would be a good way to put it. If you imagine cake batter or bread dough isn't really pourable, but it's more viscous. And so baking is what's used there. It tends to be a lower temperature. And then roasting is a higher temperature and looking more at solid foods like vegetables and proteins. You could think of a roast, or even if you are roasting chicken breasts or types of cuts of beef. Also, I will note here on the far side here is nutrition notes. So I talk about potential nutrient impacts, also the importance of adding some fat. And I do also mention here how boiling is ideal by if you are going to be boiling certain vegetables, you know already that that will leach nutrients. But if you use that liquid that you were boiling the vegetables in as a soup, so use it as a broth, you can recapture those nutrients in that liquid. And so not all is lost. And we've already come down to the challenges of the week. So if you fancy yourself a cook at home, then these are challenges geared for you. The first challenge is to, as I put here, swap it. So if there's a food that you typically deep fry or fry, pan fry frequently, and you feel like maybe you are getting a little more fat than you were intending to, swap it for a different style. Try out roasting, try out air frying, and see what works best for you, and see if the flavor changes in a better or worse way. If you're not doing a whole lot of frying, then check out challenge number 2, where it talks about steaming it. So again, many people grew up, it seems, at least people that I've talked with, grew up with boiling vegetables, and also this may explain why some people don't like vegetables, because boiling doesn't impart the best flavor necessarily. And so if that was sort of your pattern or habit, let's try to steam them. You can buy the microwave and bag options where they steam in the bag. You set it usually for 3-5 minutes and it self-steams there. And then you can season it however you see fit. Or try it the old-fashioned way where there's a stovetop steamer. It's a sort of a perforated basket where it fits inside a pan or a pot with boiling water, and so it just sits right over that, so that boiling water is steaming and not actually touching the vegetables. And that is also a great way to steam your vegetables. To put all this together, again, remember that how you cook your food can have perhaps a surprising nutritional impact. And I do want to mention, though, that cooking with less fat can help with calories and also GI tolerance issues, but I'm not imploring that you cook with no fat. Fat does equal flavor, but it also can help with the absorption of fat-soluble vitamins. So I'm not saying to get rid of it completely, but if you're doing what you feel might be a higher fat diet than what you intend, try and back off, cook with less, and then also focus on olive oils and unsaturated fats as much as possible. And remember, the nutrient impacts go beyond calories, as we've mentioned. But also, I think it's very important that you find the cooking methods that work for you, work for your lifestyle, and can also work for your goals. And now I will leave this time for any questions that you may have. And I also wanted to list my sources here in case you were curious about that. All right. Well, I hope you found all of this information helpful, maybe inspired you to try a new cooking method. And of course, if you have any questions about this topic or other nutrition related topics, you can reach out to the Premier Weight Loss staff and have them get in touch with me. But I know they're also a wonderful resource in their own regard, and we'll be sure to have answers for you. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye.